What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. It is Plymouth Brethren Christian Church Day on Blackballed, which is basically, well, nowadays it's every day on Blackballed. But this one has like a Popeye twist to it. If Popeye were awful and evil, Richard Marsh isn't going to get that because it's a pop culture reference. But if the... You know, when you collect Plymouth Brethren Christian Church sins or crimes or examples of oppression or systematic abuse or coercionary criminal behavior, it becomes pretty clear that they're not really that nice. And when other stories happen that you would think that it's probably not intentional, but who knows what the real reason could be. But then when you add these little sprinkle stories, and we have one of those tonight, these little sprinkle stories, like the one tonight is kind of crazy because they have a farm called Riviera Farms. And Riviera Farms, I guess, sells spinach. And they sold spinach that subsequently poisoned like hundreds of fucking Australians. And I don't know what you call that, but it couldn't happen to a worse bunch of assholes. And we're here to talk about that tonight with Richard Marsh and Cheryl Hope. Welcome, Richard and Cheryl. How are you guys?
Good. I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pick up the energy there a bit, guys, because we have poisonous spinach to talk about.
My favorite subject.
Yes. So, I mean, okay. First of all, at a cult-owned business, right? Is it, when people say that, is it because the people that belong to the cult own the business, or does the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church itself, as an organization, have an ownership stake in these businesses?
Well, that's a complicated question because all the major businesses, and this would certainly be one of them in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, or should I say that are owned by members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, are intimately connected with an organization called UBT, Universal Business Team. Yes, the cult has a stake in the business. Very well defined legally. In practice, they have a finger in the running, have a finger in where the profits go, and they certainly have a finger in who works for the business and who doesn't work for the business. So, I mean, typically, for example, they have clauses in the businesses, title deeds or whatever you call it, such that if any of the directors was to leave the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, they are also obliged to leave their directorship and their stake in the business behind. So yes, by constitution, the business must remain in cult ownership.
Yeah. But the tax exempt status. So, I mean, they don't get a tax benefit for the businesses.
No, the businesses aren't tax exempt. They have all sorts of charity and pseudo charitable bodies that are tax exempt, but the businesses as such have to pay tax. Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Because the people that own, so my understanding is that the people that run the businesses are brethren. They may employ people that aren't, but they won't fucking have lunch with them.
No.
For some reason.
Probably a good thing in this case.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if you're a commoner, you're probably like, phew, oh shit, that's dodged a bullet there. But anyway, so they also probably benefit financially from receiving funds to the church, because that's probably where a lot of the companies donate their money to, right?
Yeah, I mean, what happens, for example, that they get very heavily subsidized private schooling in return for large donations to the cult charity organizations. So effectively they get tax relief on their educational costs.
Wasn't that one of the things that Damien Hasty was talking about when he was talking about how the money cycles through the UBT ecosystem, which is what we're going to also, I'm going to pivot to that in a second, Cheryl, and bring you in on this. But the idea that the businesses might not be tax exempt, but I wonder if they break even given who they give their charity dollars to. Like, I mean,
they would make very large donations to church funds, and of course they don't pay tax on what they donate. It reduces their stated profit, and then they get a lot of benefits from those church funds. So ineffectively they get a hefty tax break. Yeah.
Cheryl, how are you? First of all, I love your hat. It's very festive, and I'm not trying to single out what you're wearing because you're a woman, so no one send me emails. Richard's just wearing the raggedy blue t-shirt because he's a new dad again, so I didn't want to bring any attention to it, but there you are. You look great, Cheryl. So how are you, when you take a look at the charity aspect of the PBCC, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you, honestly?
That they should not have a charity status, for number one.
Right.
It's complex. I'm not going to lie. We are looking into sitting down with a charity expert to try and help us comb through a lot of what the PBCC is doing right now. And we're going to get her to help us really find the loopholes that they're jumping through that they shouldn't be jumping through. I mean, I guess not necessarily shouldn't be, but I mean, for a Christian church establishment, they shouldn't be.
I think the basic thing is that if you analyze all the money that they take, gift receipted, tax receipted, tax-free money that goes into their so-called charities, only about 2% of it actually benefits anyone outside of the church. Yeah. Because all the rest is spent on their internal, charitable enterprises. And they're extremely wealthy. I mean, even their average, their wages are very high, and there's very few genuine potential recipients for charitable funding within the church. And so they spend about, less than 2% of their money on the RRT, Rapid Relief Team, which does these very visible public hamburger fests.
You know what they do? If I can just interject for a second, those RRT things, ever since the beginning, I was like, what does this remind me of? Because I was like, this is exactly like something. And then I remembered, when there's these companies that specialize in the sponsorship activation, and they go to events and they have booths and they give away food. And it's literally taken from the playbook of that kind of like low level, here's what we can include in your marketing package as a corporation. We'll set you up with a tent, and we'll do it in a high traffic area where there'll be a lot of people, and we'll give away food to attract them to the booth. It is like exactly like that. So that I found that interesting because that's it.
Yeah,
that's what they do.
I mean, we found an internal cult document, or we acquired, shall we say, an internal cult document, being the instructions on how to set up the 10-foot by 20-foot RR tent, including all the plans, a detailed list of what you had to do. And the number one instruction out of a list of 15 steps you take to set it up is ensure the tent is sited for the best visibility to the public and the media.
Yeah.
That's number one.
That's exactly how a sponsorship activation contract works. Like you get your visibility. What's the media impressions? What's the line of sight? Like but that is pretty interesting because
but you have normal charities.
That's worth like nothing. That would be worth like maybe $3,000.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like if you were out there for like 2 hours with 2 staffers or whatever, 3.
But they had a brilliant post. I mean, we kind of watch and follow the Twitter RRT post. They're very active on Twitter, and they donated 100 snack packs to some Abbotsford, probably Abbotsford, British Columbia fire station. Okay, so they got 100 snack packs, and like these are little packs. So it's about 7 cardboard boxes, like shoebox size. And they've got these stacked up in a kind of a pyramid, as much as you can make a pyramid out of 7 shoeboxes.
They
and it's
confess.
a beautiful sunny day.
They confess in the way they communicate. I told you, this is the pyramid scheme confession. Go on.
Well, there you go. It was a pyramid scheme. But this is the joke. It was a beautiful sunny day, clear blue sky, and over the top of this pyramid of boxes, which stood about 3 feet tall, is a 10 by 20 foot bright red RRT tent, and next to it is the great big fire engine and all the firemen lined up, and a couple of like cheesy looking RRT blokes standing next to it. So they even have a 10 by 20 foot tent just to hand over 100 snack packs.
Wow.
That's the thing. That's the issue I have with it. Is I have this huge issue. I have nothing wrong. I have no issue with charities. I have nothing. Go give. But if you're professing to be a Christian church, a mainstream Christian church, and at every single opportunity that you get to give charity to somebody, that you have to have a picture taken and published, I just don't get the point of having to have all this publicity. Like, and that's how you can tell that ROT simply is just a facade for what they do behind it.
I mean, actually, on that presentation, the one they just had, the GFT Trust presentation, in all the blah about RRT on there, they actually said the RRT is highly important for maintaining the external reputation of the church. And I thought, well, that's an interesting word to use. Why would they say external reputation? Why not just say reputation? Yeah. And the answer is, of course, because they all know and everyone knows that what's inside the church is totally different from the external reputation they like to project.
Yeah. So I have something here. This is an old one that you sent me, Cheryl. It says the RT displays care and compassion to people in crisis. Like these people are eating hot dogs, providing free catering assistance, eating hot dogs, tangible support to emergency services. They got water. That's what that means. Government and charitable organizations. RT volunteers are mobilized across the globe. Sorry, to serve where and when it is needed most. And I mean, they did things like, the fire, like the firefighters in small towns. And I know they did Winnipeg and stuff, but the firefighters in small towns, like they'll just stand in the middle of the road and block traffic with a big boot. And then people drive by and put money in the boot. I don't know if they do that where you guys are, but that's what they do.
Yeah, they do that here. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I find it, it's weird. It's like sort of half affable, half mafia. It's like you imagine, because I could easily picture a mafia guy be like, wait, you can just fucking do that? You can just stop traffic and just give me your fucking money and just they do it? Yeah, that's right. I need to get a piece of that. Like that. That's what they would say. Anyways, this RRT, the Rapid Relief Team, is essentially a marketing team that uses volunteers. I didn't realize that. They use volunteers, and they're counting that as a part of their expense to write it off as and to maintain a charitable status. Isn't that basically it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
They created RRT when their charity status was suspended back in, when was that, Richard? 2000.
About 2012, 2014 in the UK.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we're getting off the spinach, James.
Yes, I was just to thank you for the heart. Thank you for the heart bit where I have to wipe my mouth now. But the main reason we are here tonight is the breaking story out of Australia, and I keep laughing and I keep on reminding myself that people were hurt, right? Like, this wasn't a good thing. So
this was no joke.
This was the headline. Farm that harvested contaminated spinach was previously accused of poor weed control. Okay, I'm going to read it to you with that headline there. A Victorian farm that produced a batch of contaminated spinach that left hundreds of Australians sick was accused in a legal dispute in 2018 of poor weed control and other substandard farming practices. I'm pretty sure this is like the follow-up article to the breaking news of this company. More than 200 people across Australia, including a child who was hospitalized in Queensland, have suffered toxic reactions, including headaches, nausea, and hallucinations after consuming the spinach harvested at I don't know why I laugh at this story. harvested at Riviera Farms near Bamesdale in East Gippsland. The bags of spinach were recalled from supermarkets when the alarm was raised on Saturday. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the point where we want to sort of focus our attention. Actually, you know what? I'll just read it in order. First of all, I didn't know they owned farms. Do they own farms everywhere? Is that one of their things?
They
Is like they're like tier 2 builders. They like will do roofs and they'll do like other things like that isn't the original construction, but they do a lot of that landscaping and stuff. And is farming one of those common industries that they have across the globe?
Yeah, it's not very common, but yeah, there would be a lot of brethren farmers and ranchers in all different kinds of farming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. I'm going to get through this a little bit quicker. Late on Wednesday, the company released a statement admitting the spinach batch in question had been contaminated by thorn apple, also known as Jimson weed. I feel like we're talking about the Shire, and these are hobbits. That's a Lord of the Rings reference, Richard. Anyways, the plant
I've read Lord of the Rings, James.
Oh,
it's
there
not
you go.
Just a film. It was originally a book.
What's a book? The plant is. I work in a library. That's kind of funny. The plant is poisonous to people and livestock, and consumption of it can dilate pupils, high temperatures, incoherence or hallucinations. Sounds like a mushroom trip. Vomiting, breathing problems, and convulsions. That does not. In 2018, Riviera Farms became embroiled in a legal dispute after it sued agrochemical companies Syngenta and Ascenzi, alleging its carrot and corn crops have been wiped out by contaminated herbicides. The Age and Sydney Morning Herald can reveal that in 2019, an agricultural consultant hired by Lander and Rogers, the law firm representing Syngenta in the case, disputed the evidence provided by Riviera Farms. The expert alleged instead that several paddocks at Riviera Farms demonstrated poor weed control and irrigation, along with deficient chemical hygiene practices and waterlogging. So they cut corners, right? That's basically what they're saying. They cut corners and poisoned a bunch of Australians. And I find it really symbolic. I think that is, the sick Australians are about 55,000 strong, I think. Well, exactly, and I'm not branding them in an evil way. I'm saying the leadership is evil, and they have an army of people that are under the spell of these leaders, and it's not good for them. And it reminds me of food poisoning of the brain, basically. And but it's also delightfully funny for some reason. I don't know. Do you either find it funny?
I was thinking, like one school, these brethren schools, they better have a look at their students and see if their pupils are dilated, isn't they?
Well, yeah. I wonder how many of them are high just like all the time because of what they go through at home. Because the brethren are probably not. They're not they don't really know what to look for. What are the signs of drug use? They probably have a pamphlet, but they don't really know what to look for, and they're drunk all the time, anyways. Yeah. Richard.
Well, yeah, the alcohol masks the other symptoms.
Yeah. It was funny because when I was a reporter for this one story that I was doing, I would record a lot of phone calls, and I was still drinking back then. So all of these recorded phone calls with interview subjects and sources, you could hear the rattling of my ice cubes as I'm drinking, right? and I realized that when you pointed out that Bruce Hale, you can hear the ice cubes when he was delivering that thing with the charity, with the Vision Fund, where he's trying to grift and shake the localities by the ankles to the tune of $500 million. That he was also heard with the swilling his whiskey and the ice cubes rattling, and it made me that much more cemented in my decision to not drink, because I don't want to feel like I have anything in common with that man. You know what I mean? He is such a gross pig. I've been watching culty kind of stuff lately, and am amazed by a lot of the comparisons. The one thing that I don't imagine the brethren doing, unless they feel like the law is squeezing them, is and this is the best thing I can say about the brethren, is that they don't feel like a cult that will eventually start preaching about the end times. Or am I totally off base on that?
Oh no, they're always preaching about the end times. No, that's the strange thing.
That's another box they check for cultiness. But okay.
Well, yes, the strange thing about that last presentation that everyone was commenting on, like the ex-brethren were commenting on, is that there was all this blah about, oh yes, we're going to finance the church and our lifestyle for a very long time. And we thought, well, this is new ministry, because usually the rapture's just about to happen. But obviously they've realized that if they get too close to the end time, then people might start slacking off, and think we can just cruise the last few miles. So they've put the rapture back a bit.
But I was just listening to part of the Levitical meetings that happened, whenever that was, but I was listening to part of the recordings of it. And Bruce is in there talking about, we don't know how much time we have left, right? I mean, he uses those that's just a fear-mongering scare tactic of like, let's make as much money because we don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, and now I'm happy that I do, because it says everything. Like I don't look for ways to sort of give them breaks or anything like that. But because they do check every box. That's what I was saying. I was watching the thing. I think of the Sins of the Mother. It's called, and it's about the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
And how crazy that is. Like, there's so many of them that say that, I talk to angels all the time, and the angels give me directives that I'd like to now pass on to you. And it's just like, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
And so it feels like they harm now. Maybe the reason why I laugh involuntarily at the spinach story is because they have found a way to not just poison your minds and your souls and your children and your self-worth and your ambition, but also your body.
Yeah. Well, they've already got your liver. This is just finishing your brain off.
That's right. That's right. So it reminded you, Richard, of, you sent it to me. Let me see where it is.
Another article he found. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it this one? No. This?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
So, Richard, can you read that? Because I'm not familiar with it, and I don't want to butcher it. Yeah.
Well, this is the Rajneeshi bioterror attack, which was that crazy cult down in Oregon or wherever it was. There was a famous Netflix article all about it, Wild Wild Country, Netflix docu-series. And this was one of these kind of, a little bit like a Jonestown cult, but instead of killing off themselves, they decided to kill off the rest of the world. And they were messing around in biological warfare. They tried it out by spraying some potent salmonella broth they'd brewed up. They sprayed it over local salad bars, over the sort of buffet salad bar, and they managed to make 751 people suffer food poisoning as a result. I'm not suggesting what the Brethren did was actually deliberate, but it's kind of an interesting parallel.
It would be interesting to know who.
It's not the first time a cult has managed to poison a large number of the members of the public.
That's right. And Jonestown, we all where the Kool-Aid reference comes from.
Spinach Kool-Aid, it's a wash, isn't it?
But it would be interesting to find out who the victims are and if they have anything in common. That would be that would be beneficial.
But there's a serious side to this, and that is, you might say, and I'm sure the Brethren would argue, why is it being fingered in the newspaper article that this was owned by a member of the Plymouth Brethren Church? I think it says a well-respected member of the Plymouth.
Yeah, at the very bottom it points it out.
Just read that bit, James, because that's the crux of it.
Riviera Farms is directed by Nelson Cox, a respected local elder of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, the director of the Bairnsdale campus of the Brethren School, and a trustee of the Church Hall Trust.
There you go.
Now, they didn't have to say that.
No. The Brethren would say this is unfair because, if it was a Catholic that owned the farm, you wouldn't say, well, the farmer's a Catholic, as if there was some connection. But of course, in this case, and in any case where it's the Brethren flaunting regulations, there is a very strong reason, and that is because the Brethren have no respect for authorities, local authorities, safety regulations, because they believe they're above the law. And it's absolutely typical. There's been a whole string of horrific accidents, some fatal and some involving children, on Brethren-run building construction sites. And it all comes down to their disregard of authority. They think they're above health and safety regulations. They think they don't apply to them. And the other thing that makes the Brethren particularly dangerous people to be around is that they have in their minds this two-tier sort of apartheid view of humanity. There's us, and there's those dirty people out there. And I'll give you an example of how that works. After a particularly unpleasant road accident where someone was killed, a mother was killed, and the Brethren were talking about this. It wasn't a Brethren member in the accident. A sister, a lady in the Brethren, a nice person, said to me, well, it was only a worldly person that was killed. As if that made a difference, And I mean, this is the kind of Brethren attitude. And I can almost hear them saying it now in Australia. The Brethren will say, oh, well, it was only worldly people that got poisoned.
In that one document, they refer to them as worldlings.
Yeah,
is that children?
Worldlings, yeah.
Is that children?
Worldlings just means anyone who's not Brethren, yeah.
That is
very Lord of the Rings. Dave. That's a book I read.
Yeah. Halflings or whatever. I mean, it's I'm out of the emotion that causes surprise when it comes to the Brethren. And
there was another case. There was another case of mass poisoning by a Brethren company that also came down to their attitudes and lack of morals. And that, of course, was the Deprox case that I was involved in, where probably hundreds of hospital workers were poisoned by hydrogen peroxide and silver nitrate that they inhaled from a Brethren designed and manufactured disinfection machine. And the owners of the company knew perfectly well what it was doing, but they just didn't care. They were making a good profit. So they just carried on and bluffed their way through.
Didn't they? Wasn't it worse? Didn't they get a government contract and then not actually do what they were supposed to do?
That was the same company a few years later. Yeah, they got I think it was 127 million contract from the NHS to supply robes and masks, and 124 million. This is pounds, not dollars. 124 million of that has now been marked up by the government as unusable, which is a lot of money. And now here I'm going to make a prediction that company, they used to be called Hygiene Solutions, and after the kind of scandal about their poisoning hospital workers blew up, they quickly changed their name and their branding, and now they're called Innovos. Now I'm going to bet that Riviera Farms is going to play the same trick. There's probably going to be a huge class action lawsuit. If they're very lucky, their insurers might take care of it. But you won't see Riviera Farms brand around again. It'll be called something else.
Oh, yeah. They remind me of the Freemasons, Like a bum. You guys know who the Freemasons are? Like
Yeah.
Richard, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who they are. Yeah.
Like a brotherhood. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird kind of legend that they have, I guess I would say, because it seems like, they created a mystique behind the brand of the Freemasons, where back in the day it was like Leonardo da Vinci was one of the original Freemasons. You go through history, and now it's like your friend dad Henry happens to be a Freemason for some reason. But he's an IT guy, or something, and it doesn't have the same ring to it as it used to. But in essence, though, the underpinning of the whole idea of the Freemason use their own social circle as a way to benefit each other politically and business and business wise, and socially, just very insulated and to the benefit of itself and itself only.
Yes, yeah, that is a similar concept.
Yeah, and the formula similar. As I watch all these documentaries about all these different cults and religions that do what they do, the thing that they always have in common is the greed and the hypocrisy on the very top, and the bizarre way in which, as a worldling, I look from the outside in, and kind of like I feel sad and angry and also really confused because I can't imagine being in that position and being like, yes, this makes sense. I'll just give you money. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, exactly. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you have to be born into it, really. I mean, the level of indoctrination that can be achieved in someone that's actually born into a cult is much higher than you can reasonably expect to produce in someone who joins as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, people nowadays wouldn't get away, like Bruce wouldn't get away with what he gets away with if he weren't born into it, right?
Yeah.
He's doing what he's doing because he's now got a multi-generational cult that is very severely indoctrinated into all the layers that his dad did and layers of the leaders before him. He's just been planning this. He's got a complete free pass with 55,000 brains in there that he can just maneuver and do what he needs to do. I mean, right down to the fact today, we recorded a podcast today, and the guest was talking about a couple people who had committed suicide inside there, and his whole response was, well, don't attach any stigma to it, and they had to hide why they passed away, and right to the point where he actually said, well, she would have regretted it at the last minute. Like as if he was God.
Bruce says this. Yeah, Bruce Hale.
Yeah, Bruce said this. Like as if he was God, and he's telling people that he knew what she was thinking in the last minute. Honestly, she was probably thinking, "Hell, I'm like out of here," right?
Yeah.
But it's just like the level of indoctrination that Bruce has inside there is that nobody questions some of the most utterly chaotic and intrusive indoctrination possible.
I think Cheryl makes a very good point, and the way to kind of think of it is if you were to take all the brethren away from Bruce and drop him into some completely fresh country, he would never be able to gather round himself any kind of a cult. Yeah, he might find a few half-wits who would trot along if he spewed some dollars out. The only reason he has this control is because he's inherited it. Like you said, like you pointed out, he's not a charismatic person.
Yeah.
He's about as charismatic as a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, we all know vacuum cleaner.
And because he came along and he offered them a lot of freedom when he came in, like that's when they got their laptops and phones and all these things that were never allowed in before then. So he gave them all this candy inside a jail cell that he was just making that much more stronger. You know,
I wonder how much he makes a month on those. What do they call those? Like those monthly parties where they celebrate giving money they can't afford to Bruce?
The care meeting.
Oh, and care meeting, yeah. First Saturday of every month is care meeting, and everybody gives their money away.
So even if everybody they're 55,000 strong, I know a bunch of them are children. Well, let's just say 55,000. Even if it was just $10 a person, it's still $500,000 a month that he probably would make. Do you think it's that high? Like.
But I'm guessing there's probably like $500 per locality per month on average, and there's about 350 localities. So what does that come to? Anyone got a calculator?
Like 120, something like that.
Let's do a sum here.
I think it's like 120.
120 what?
1,000.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. So 120,000 a month. So let's just do this. 500 times 350 equals 175,000. That's a month. So
that's 175,000.
Yeah. So 2.1 million a year, and he's been doing this for how long? 20 years now.
Wow.
So they've handed him at least $42 million already just for doing nothing.
Didn't you personally give him like a couple of $100,000? Isn't that kind of what didn't you try to figure out what you? I thought
I put hundreds of thousands into the school system. Yes, over time.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like those stories. I don't know how many people are. I don't know how common that is, Richard. Inside to.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. So that's the money I'm talking about. Like that's a lot more than $500 a month. You know what I mean?
And 500 is low, but I get it. So they collect. So every Sunday is where this money that they divvy up on care meeting Saturday is collected every Sunday at what do you want to call it? Communion, I guess you guys would know it as they call it the Lord's Supper, right?
Right.
And so where every kid, every person puts money into a bucket, right?
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic, and yeah, that's the way it was. And they were like baskets on long sticks that could reach to the middle of the pew,
they don't
right?
have the sticks; they're passed hand to hand. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we
you
had
pass
the
it around.
we had the long sticks. I think we also had the hand-to-hand ones too. But I remember even as a kid being like, "What? Like just we're just going to give our cash to these people and then walk away." And then when I got older and I knew people that worked in the service industry, bartenders and stuff, that used to get like the tax man would be so all over them because they knew they got paid in tips. So they did like there'd be extra scrutiny on their tax return or whatever. And meanwhile, every Sunday, the Catholic Church, would be like taking baskets and baskets of just cold hard cash, disappearing behind the fucking altar, and everyone's just like, "Oh, I'm sure they're going to do the greatest things ever with that money," And we just and then they just get to do it for free, and everyone just leaves them alone because. And I do want to circle back to this a lot because of the way that we treat the freedom of religion and the freedom of expression in this country, and in Western countries, is subservient to religion. It's not. I don't think this, like, the spirit of the law should not be that as long as you guys, I don't even know what the rules are for religion. As long as you guys believe in an omnipotent being, we'll leave you alone.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I know maybe I'm tangenting here a little bit, but like I really do feel that there should be some sort of mechanism that we put in place to make it that religions can't operate like mafias. Yeah. Where if you want to be a part of organized religion, I truly believe that you should have to register as a member of an organized religion the same way you might register to be a person that contributes to a charity, or that you might register to own a gun or whatever. I think that if you get to claim tax-free status and you get to, treat people with a modicum of respect, then you should probably have something in place to safeguard you of that, in the way that like unions safeguard people, or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms safeguards people. These companies and the Brethren itself, in the way that you guys were raised in the localities themselves, all again speaks back to that thing, that necessity of having some sort of coercion law on the books.
Yep.
Because if you took how they're treated and you take the exact behaviors and put it in a workplace environment, they would be violating countless labor laws.
Yeah.
Every rule.
Yeah. And I don't understand why. I mean, I do, but I don't understand why we still allow religion to circumvent those kinds of like basic human rights. Cheryl?
Do you know, this is my biggest thing with, there's so much ruckus that has happened politically right now, right? Like, there's this freedom of religion. And I have always voted conservative. My husband worked in the oil patch, so I supported his job. This is my biggest plea to people who are so on the right side of things right now, is that be careful of what you wish for. I don't even know who the heck to vote for anymore, because I don't even know where to put it. But I do know that if we give power to these people that are just pushing this freedom of religion, you are going to wish that you had listened to what is happening and what we are all trying to uncover. Because that freedom of religion, without coercion control added to it and with clauses not added to it, is going to give people like Pierre, people that Stephen Harper, yes, I know he's still in the background, but it's those people are grasping a hold of that law, or that freedom of religion, and they are going to, the power that they are, what they want to do with it, and the power that they're going to have with it is just allows the whole concept of the PBCC to be infiltrated into many other places. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that. So I'm just saying, like, I don't, people, because of COVID and because of everything that has happened, that people are like, okay, yeah, we want the conservatives in. We got the conservatives. But you know what? Just really realize of what one of their biggest things that they're pushing for is this freedom of religion. And yes, people should have freedom of religion, but that freedom of religion has to come with coercion control, and it's got to have a list of clauses. Otherwise, you guys are going to be swimming in the same fucking ocean as we are. And I apologize for swearing, but you're going to be swimming in the same ocean as we are.
Can you do me a favor? First of all, that was a good rant. I enjoyed that. And also, can you apologize to me for apologizing? This is Blackballed. You don't need to fucking apologize. You know?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to clean up my language. They're listening in there, and I need them to take me seriously.
Just say what you feel. Richard, can
but
you
I
add
need them to
anything to
listen.
that? Go ahead.
No, I think that's 100% true. And I mean, the reason the Conservatives are pushing freedom of religion largely is because they are being paid. They get a lot of money from these religions, and that's the payback. The religions basically say, you push freedom of religion and we'll financial campaigns. Not necessarily that the politicians are religious. It's that they're puppet masters, if you like. Their financial sources are extremely religious, and this is how the payback works.
Well, they've also historically been, and this is hugely important too. The political ends are obviously tied directly with provincial and federal conservative governments. They just are.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen one example of a liberal or NDP-led province where they had people, where they had Plymouth-owned companies getting sole source contracts under the guise of some front company that has nothing to do with the
with medical equipment.
With medical equipment in that specific case. So, one of the things obviously would be, Cheryl, you may have voted conservative in the past for the oil patch, but really, at the end of the day, if I was in your province, I would not be voting for a conservative party. Just because not you personally, but they're the only party that seems to have a hold or the type of interconnectedness with the Plymouth Brethren, where it results in enrichment for the Brethren. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that's why I will never vote conservative ever again. I mean, it was a hard thing for me to give up, right? Like, it's just, we live in Red Deer, we live in Alberta. Like, we're in conservative land, right? Not that I agreed with all of their principles, but I did it. There was a reason why I did it that way. And as soon as I found out this stuff, I was like, this has to be exposed. How can anyone, so after hearing our stories, how can you turn around and support these people that are literally being funded by the people who sat there and abused me for how many years, hid it, and are still hiding the pedophile that's in there? That's what I want to put out. Sorry, I get really passionate about this because
apologize.
I could cry over this because the people in Maple Creek are very conservative. They're very conservative in there. And all I'm asking everybody who has formally voted conservative is that you are supporting the group that is funded by the PBCC that are hiding hundreds of sexual abuse. I mean, the emails that I've received recently, I mean, I say this every time. It would make you go to a corner and curl up with a blanket. Well, I'm telling you that you're going to need more than just a blanket that's curled up in the corner. Like, we have to stop this. We cannot have it. And I'm not saying the other side is just as good. I don't know, right? Like, I'm literally in the abyss when it comes to political. I feel like I don't know where I stand anymore. All I do know is that I will never, ever give my vote to those that have been supported by the PBC again. Never.
There's a lot of things in politics that parties and leaders look at, and one of the big items, a pillar of strategy for every single party, is how to reach single issue voters. But some parties know how to create single issue voters. Yeah. And I think you fire on all cylinders, and the political aspect of all this would be the same as the media aspect. So they suffer from the same thing. The politicians, unsurprisingly, are unethical, and if they have any principles, trade them away for that relationship for whatever reason. The quid pro quo being, many things, from the Brethren being like a bunch of satellite offices of boiler room operations during elections for conservative parties. That's one thing. That's one value that they have in ship. I'm sure when a contract is worth $125 million, that there is some sort of briefcase opening in some parking garage in Calgary. Yeah. It's many things like that. But to reach votes the media, because the media and the politicians do suffer from the same thing, which is they don't know how to approach something that seems to have tentacles everywhere, and they're so cautious. The media is this deferential treatment, like as if there's someone to be reckoned with or respected, is one of the biggest tragedies about this story, because that's the reason why it's still happening, is because the media doesn't want to tell the story. They don't want to dig. I'm so confused by it. I think that if it was a more visibly like right-wing organization that had all the same characteristics, that they would be all over it.
Yeah.
But this is different, and they don't have the courage to do it. I don't know. I didn't mean to pivot into the media part of this, but really, that's at the center of everything that we talk about. When our frustration is born out of that absence. Would you agree with that, Richard?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it will change. I mean, as they see more and more stuff coming out, pioneered by people like you, eventually they will realize that, this
white
is
rappers
actually,
who are addicted to drugs.
Yeah, even these rap hop people, yeah.
Rap hop.
I do think too, though, Richard, wouldn't you say that once class action lawsuits get going, I mean, I'm just going to come out there and bluntly say it. Once the class action lawsuits get going, the media will jump on board. I do believe the media is waiting for that.
Once something's in court or there's actually a lawyer involved who will stand. I mean, you saw that in that Caitlin Erickson, that Saskatoon school.
Yeah.
Once they actually got a lawyer on the podium, then they had all the microphones in front of the guy, didn't they? I mean, the media know perfectly well that at some point your abuser is going to come to court, and they know that the story will keep. It'll be just as good a story then as it is now, so they're just playing safe. But once it's reached that stage, yes, they'll be there. Of course, they'll be there.
Cheryl, we're going to wrap in about 10 minutes or so, but you sent me a bunch of stuff, and I honestly don't know how to make heads or tails of it. So I'm going to flash them up, and you're going to explain what they are.
No, Richard's going to go ahead and explain this.
Yeah, so this relates to the Bruce Hale's $500 million grift, and this is the kind of umbrella organization behind it. It's called the GFT fundraising presentation, and I'm not even sure what GFT stands for. Probably
Good
General
fucking time.
Funding Trust or something anonymous. And at the end, this is their logo, and I kind of like the fact that underneath GFT it says transparency, which is going to be exactly the last thing you're ever going to get from any kind of Brethren financial organization. And if we move on to the next I'll explain what's going on here. Okay, so after Bruce Hales had waffled on at length about this endowment fund plan he had and how they were going to get just $500 million and get a 20% return on it, and that was going to fund the whole ecosystem forever after, which is, of course, complete bullshit. Following up from that presentation, they sent every single PBCC member a pledge form to say how much they're going to give and where they want the money to go. So this is a clip from the pledge form, and if you look, it says, "I'd like to recommend that all or a portion of my donation go to a specific entity," and then they got various Brethren charities there, and the one that I highlighted on the form is 501VF Vision Foundation. Now, if you look right at the bottom of the screen there, it says all entities other than campus trading CapEx are tax deductible. So what they're saying is that if you donate to any of these except that one campus trading capital expenses fund, you get a tax receipt because it's charitable giving. So that what they're saying here very clearly is if you give to the Vision Foundation endowment fund, then they will give you a Canadian tax receipt and you can deduct that from your tax return and get all the charitable giving tax benefits. Now, this is illegal. Well, I haven't done anything illegal yet, but if they take money, this is just a pledge form, if they actually take the money from the Brethren and give it to the Vision Foundation and they give the Brethren the tax deductible receipt like they promised, that would be illegal because firstly, Vision Foundation is not a Canadian charity. It is an Australian corporation, and it's very easy to find. We found their Australian official registration page. And two things. Firstly, you can't get a tax receipt if your money is being sent to another organization overseas, except in very special circumstances. I mean, that's what the Mormons were doing. There was a big fuss about it because they were taking donations in Canada, sending them to this university in the USA. Now, in that case, it was legal because certain large universities have an exemption if they have Canadian students. But you certainly cannot take a charitable gift in Canada and send it to a private Australian endowment fund in Australia and get a Canadian tax deductible receipt for it. Now to even further to that, if you look up it's called ABN, Australian Business Number. If you look up on the Australian business number, like the government site where all the registered companies are listed, and you look up Vision Foundation, you find it clearly states on the government page about that organization that it can't receive tax deductible gifts. So even if you're in Australia, you can't get a tax receipt for giving money to the Vision Foundation.
But
so
it says
both ways.
Yeah, but it actually points out that only one of them is not tax deductible, which is the campus trading camp.
Yeah,
Capex?
capex means, I guess, capital expenses or something.
So Jesus-y. Anyways,
yes, very.
There's that. What's this? I already read that one. What's this one?
Yeah. No. You go. This is
This is old stuff.
The RRT. That's RRT.
Yeah, this is RRT.
Okay, RRT.
So there's a lot more. Yeah, this is the one we were referring to earlier.
I'll go back one.
Jump back one.
This one?
Okay.
Yeah. Number one.
Number one. This is setting up the RRT tent. Read it out, James.
Prior to setup, check with incident controller you are in correct location for amount of hours required. Aim for good exposure to media in public. That's their first priority, right?
Number one.
Number one. Make sure that the media sees you. Second one are the uniforms with the caps on, including aprons. So this is the dress code. Then set up the tent with two people. Apparently, takes two. It doesn't, because I've done it. Set up serving tables with RT table covers, and the fact that they're volunteers is hilarious, because I bet you there's an expense report. I'm speculating. This might not be true, allegedly, but there's some expense reports out there that show what the value would be up to, even if it was minimum wage workers, and they probably claim that, as a cost or whatever.
I think actually they've revised this now. There's an extra line at the bottom saying, check the salad for poisonous weeds.
for Jimmy, for whatever that hobbit plant was. Sorry.
It's a horrific plant. Another name for it is devil's snare, rather appropriately. Yeah.
I remember when I was in BC, there was something called the Devil's Club. And the Devil's Club in BC was where I had a job where I was clearing creeks. And we would have to climb literal mountainsides. We'd get dropped off by the helicopter on the top of the snow mountain in July and then work our way down and creating a river as we go, right? And I got caught on this mini cliff once, and I grabbed a handful of Devil's Club. And it's called Devil's Club because I'm sorry about the aside, but it's called Devil's Club because it's these thorns that go into you and then break, and then it just comes out 2-3 days later, and it just they rise to the surface of your skin. And you just sit there with tweezers, and it's like porcupine quills, but miniature. But that reminded me of that. Well, okay, let's wrap here because how many more adjectives do you got in you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Was there anything that I left out?
Oh, there's lots more that could be said, but there's another day, isn't there?
We're gonna dive into the Strive 23 one soon. I just gotta go through all the recordings.
I want to thank you guys for this week, because this week was I wanted to put as much in as I could before Christmas. I'm still gonna keep going. Because I think that I've changed my format a little bit, where I just want to kind of drips and drabs, like death by 1,000 cuts, and do as many stories as possible. And I thank you guys because you guys are my main, source for all this information. You guys give me your time, and you have this week to the tune of a few hours, so I appreciate that a lot. And
we should thank our beloved Mr. Bruce for continuing to
for
do
providing
so much,
us.
for continuing to do so much weird illegal shit that it keeps James and the rest of us in business.
That's right.
And you know what?
Most
We appreciate
creative
all the
man.
insiders. We appreciate everybody on the inside that are constantly emailing us and sending us recordings. And, I know
keep it
that
coming.
Bruce. Yeah, Bruce is having a, frantic attack right now, trying to figure out where they all are. But I have to tell you, Bruce, we have them all over. You're never going to get just one. We have moles all over.
Be like trying to pick all the thorn apple out of your baby spinach, Bruce, because they're just everywhere,
Oh my gosh. Well, that was blasphemous in the best way possible. Richard Marsh, Cheryl Hope, thank you for joining us. We'll probably see you again in like an hour when we do another podcast about the Plymouth Brethren.
Have a good Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. See you guys.
Take care.
Okay. Cheryl Hope and Richard Marsh, thank you again. As always, that was fun. It's good to be good-hearted about Plymouth Brethren Christian Church stories now because there's just so many of them. Honestly, I have enough content for like another 20 shows because we just started to look at it differently. And instead of just trying to gravitate towards the big stories that might break, we're just going to continue. Like there's so many things to choose from because they're active politically and from a business perspective in the UK to a huge extent, in Canada to a pretty big, the margins in Canada actually are really big because they have 4 different provinces that give them contracts. The Australian stories are always coming out. New Zealand stories are always coming out. So we could just pick. And, I think it's really important to look at this group as one thing. And, it's funny. I never intended to have like this niche as a podcast subject because I still interview rappers and journalists. And I've been focusing lately on interviewing people from Ukraine. I have a guest coming up the next couple of days that I should tell you about soon. And and we have actually, if I can ask you guys to go to my Spotify or wherever you want to go, YouTube, to watch the interview that I did, that I was really kind of impressed so much with the person that I was interviewing. And her name is, I don't want to get the pronunciation of the last name wrong, Olena Halushka. I interviewed her I think 2 days ago. Again, her name is Olena Halushka, and she was so, I don't know, authentic, I guess I want to say, very passionate about what she does. She's the co-founder of a group that, wants to do away with political corruption, or a board member. And she has such a high level of patriotism for her country, which was obviously invaded by a much larger military. And she was emotional on the show, and she cried a little bit, and it was like, and I think I mentioned to her that listening to her talk, despite the fact that there were tears, that she really emanated this like strength and this patriotism. And anyways, I'm gonna start talking about that, about the kind of most rewarding, not the most rewarding, I want to rank, but the memorable interview of the week, sort of thing. And for this week, it would definitely be Olena Halushka. Like I said, she just sort of embodies that kind of Ukrainian spirit that we've been hearing about, the same kind of spirit that Alex has, and just coming at it from a totally different perspective. So I encourage you to go take a look at that Olena Halushka interview, and maybe let me know what you think. What day is it? Thursday, Friday. Do I have anyone tomorrow? Oh, I have Casual Friday tomorrow. Oh, see that? This is the face of a person who just experienced a sigh of relief because I don't have to do any work for tomorrow's show. Not a lick of it. What happened last week is that Casual Friday began, and Ryan, who is just the greatest guy ever, because he he really took on a lion's share of the show. Which I think was a mutual benefit there, because he's got his new toy that makes all those cool sounds and he programs beats in it, and I really like it. It kind of adds something to the show. I like talking with beats underneath me. I'm going to start doing that, I think, at the end of shows when the guest leaves, and just put like a subtle beat, behind me, like I would do something, the same thing that I do at the beginning, because it makes me feel like it makes my pacing better. It gives me moments where I can pause, and people aren't going to judge how it sounds, because they got a beat playing in the background. And who doesn't like to hear a voice over top of a beat? And what I try to bring you here on Blackballed is an experience, okay? It's very experiential. I do it for you guys. And I am so full of shit. No, I do it for you guys, but I just wouldn't express it like that. We'll see you tomorrow on Casual Fridays, and thank you for joining us on Blackballed. Cheers, everybody.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.